Good morning, everyone. My name is Ellie Mattern. I am steeped in the legal services community. I started my career as a staff attorney. I've been a director of technology for a legal services organization. I've been a vendor of legal technology software. And today we're going to talk about how not to build abandonware. And I hope you'll have some actionable and useful takeaways from this presentation. I do want to say, as a point of order, I love questions. Feel free to ask questions at any time during the presentation. Don't need to hold them to the end. So my associate today is?
Hi, I'm Jada Briegel. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Legal Services Corporation. I do see my boss in the audience, which means I'll have to behave a little more than planned. And Ron, I would really like, if I get a little too snarky, if you just give me a hi sign. We wanted to start with one of my favorite infographics about projects, whether they're implementing, whether you're developing or whether you're implementing a system, an off-the-shelf system. And it's something that we've grown to sort of love at LSC. It's based on the Gartner Hype Cycle. They use it to talk about new technology. It works really well with all the projects that we do. So you start something, most people get pretty excited. They have this inflated enthusiasm. They talk about all the great stuff that this new thing is going to do. We laugh like, did they tell us to make cappuccino with it yet? And everybody gets a little excited. And then you get into the development or the project, and everybody starts getting a little bit tired of hearing about this, and it's not coming together, and that's our trough of disillusionment. And we have, someone who is the queen of the trough of disillusionment at LSC, and I will not name any names. And then I think that's an inflection point that's really important. You can either sort of take the low road and you get your abandonment of your project, or you keep going, you pull it out, and you get to that productivity, and you get there and everybody says, wow, this is different, and this is really important that we did this. So we talk about this in our projects, like, are we in the trough of disillusionment right now?
Okay, so we will talk about some projects today. So as a lawyer, I'm going to put out a disclaimer. Any resemblance to any projects, living or dead, is purely coincidental. I also wanted to give you guys some sense for where in time you want to do some of these thinking exercises. So before you're awarded a grant, this is kind of our overview of the way we're going to talk through things today. You want to focus on the problem, you want to ask for technical quotes, avoid content-heavy projects, and talk to finance and other members of your staff about maintenance funding. You're in front of me. Then create a master project plan, build consensus, not committees, which is on there twice because it's that important. And think about all of the maintenance going forward. Maintaining a system should be somebody's job, and that interns are not principals.
All right, so we believe that when you're faced with a problem, you should take a lot of time thinking about the problem before you think about the solution.
So one of my favorite recent reads is called When Kale and Coffee Compete, and it's a book on product development. And the premise of kale and coffee being in competition is when you think about how you want to start your day in the morning. You want to have a productive day, you want to have a successful day. Some people are like, give me my caffeine. And other people are like, give me that green juice full of kale. And so you don't think of them as being in competition, but they are, because the thing somebody's trying to achieve is productivity, it's success, it's a happy morning. And so when you think about problem solving, you should be thinking about what is it we're trying to achieve here rather than what are we trying to build. So you work into what are you trying to build after you know what feeling you want people to walk away with, what we're trying to accomplish.
And then One of the things that I've found is you start talking about these problems that you're trying to solve, and we jump into technology too quickly, and what they really are there are process issues, or there are maybe people issues, and you really need to address those. And I say this a lot, like, don't automate a bad process. We've almost done that a few times, and probably we have done it if you all have used our systems. And I would say don't forget that technology is just the enabler of business. It's not the reason for doing anything.
Apologies for people who have heard me use this analogy before, but a lot of times I talk about technology is like a megaphone. And if you have somebody shouting gibberish, that just makes them louder if you give them a megaphone. And so if you automate a bad process, you're just making it louder or faster. You're not actually fixing the problem you're trying to solve for. So I actually captured real-life footage of somebody designing their budget for a technology project. I cannot tell you the number of times that I have read RFPs and I have wondered to myself, where did this number come from? And I hear some other people agree with me.
There are lots of people with experience in this room.
Yes. And so I encourage all of you, you don't have to put out formal RFIs, requests for informations, or formal requests for quotes, even from vendors, just to pick people's brains to say, hey, how much would this project cost? How long would it take? That's the other thing. It's not just about price, it's about time. You're not going to design an entire Airbnb system in 3 weeks. So if that was your idea, you're like, hey, I've come to do Airbnb for legal aid. Well, it's going to take you a little longer than you thought. So talk to people, talk to technical partners to get real information about how long scoping projects, both time and cost.
I mean, and you're one of our vendor partners for our community, and you wouldn't turn someone away that came to you and said, Ellie, I want to do X. Can you give me an idea of how much that would cost? And it's not something formal or anything like that.
I'm going to just straight up speak for all of the vendors in the space and say I don't think any of them would turn anybody away to talk to them. I also know many of them personally, and they would be happy to say, we don't do that kind of work, but that person over there does, and they would be happy to tell you what the scope of that project would be or how much it would cost. And so you're absolutely right.
So this might be a little controversial, but this goes to scoping your project. It's really hard for a small organization to take on something that has a ton of content necessary.
We see this a lot, and I am not saying you can't do content-heavy projects. Lots of people have massive websites, you've got forms, you've got all kinds of things that have content. That said, you need to know from the beginning, how are we going to maintain that content? How are we going to update it? Whose job is it going to be to update it? And if you don't have answers to every single one of those questions, oh, and how are you going to fund the continuation of those updates? Then maybe you think, how can we scale down this project so that it's bite-sized and we know that we can maintain it into the future? We're going to talk a lot about maintenance today. And when you think about, I say it a lot, content-heavy projects. And so if that is a foreign concept to you, if you think about any website, you'd go a travel blog, a food blog. You know how they've got like pages and pages and pages of like, I built this dish or made this dish because my kids love it on Tuesday afternoons. I read a lot of cooking blogs. That content doesn't need to be updated. They can have that same blog post up there for 15 years. But if you're talking about what eviction looks like in this particular area, that may need to be updated annually. It may need to be updated. You need somebody to look at that to make sure you're not giving out wrong legal information.
And I feel like this is the elephant in the room that you have to address. Don't build technology and then think about it later. It's really important to talk about how hard this is up front. All right, so let's talk about maintenance. I'm kind of an operations girl. Came from operations in, very big tech. And when you talk about a project, you really need to talk about like, what are my maintenance costs going to be? Like, do I have the money to maintain this after I've built it? What are my third-party services going to cost? how much is it going to cost me for the software going forward? How much is it going to cost me for security and technical updates and those content updates? Make sure that you actually plan for those maintenance costs before you start this project, or else you probably aren't going to get you're going to get something built and then not be able to continue on. And one rule of thumb is 15 to 25% of the total cost of the project are maintenance. And you have to think I'm going to build this, I'm going to develop this. In the coming years, am I going to continue to have to pay a developer for all the changes that my users need? Am I going to have to pay for the software licensing? All of those things. I just think about that while you're in the beginning.
Absolutely. Quick show of hands. How many of you have worked on or built technology projects? Some people come to ICTC because they've never done it before. So if you've done it before, okay, great. So many of you know this. I didn't ask the people who haven't done it to raise their hand. I won't do that to you. But just a quick rundown. We've got bullet points here about things that are costs that continue. So if you are licensing a software, that means you're using a third-party SaaS product, whether that's Outlook or whether that's something Salesforce or something proprietary to our industry specifically. That is the annual fee you're going to pay every year. Sometimes they're small, sometimes they're large. Sometimes they're per user, and so you have to think about how many users, how many seats do we need, and sometimes they're per organization. If you've built something custom, you need to think about who's maintaining the security on that. You have client confidential information, and so security should be really important to you, and so you need to make sure that you've planned for security patches to underlying software. Technical updates so that your software doesn't atrophy over time. Even if you've planned, you're like, hey, we've got this content thing covered, we've got all the people we're gonna do it with, but then if you don't plan for your technical updates, it's just gonna get sadder and sadder over time. And then you're gonna have a technical partner come in 5 years later, and they're gonna say, I have to go and update for 5 years, and it's gonna take me a long time. So in addition to that, I just want to kind of highlight that Jada pointed out. If you're building a custom project, it is industry standard for that 15 to 25% of the total cost of the project moving forward to continue to keep that updated.
And if you're using a SaaS or something, software off the shelf sort of thing, it's probably a little bit less than that, and it probably relies on what your organization does. At Legal Services Corporation, we like to iterate all the time. And people come to me with fabulous ideas, and that means I know that that's our culture, and I actually embrace that. And I have to make sure that I have development costs annually for that amount of change and improving things.
Just SaaS, for anyone who doesn't know, is software as a service. It's so like the Whova app you've all probably been using is a SaaS product.
All right, on to schedule.
Yeah. Okay, so this is actually the project plan. I'm using Microsoft Planner. This is not intentional to show off Microsoft Planner. You can really use any project management tool. Thank you for those of you who answered the poll. Thank you for those of you who answered it twice, because I didn't realize it had actually posted. So kudos to all of you. There are all kinds of project management tools, and you can use these to build timelines about what needs to happen when. But when you think about what needs to be on them, so this, you probably can't read it, but all the way to the left side, yeah, left to right, is the backlog of all the things that need to be done for the grant. And then we have the things that are in progress. We have the things that are going to be in progress for the vendor that we're working with. And then what I did was I broke out the objectives that you have to report to LSC on into objective 1, 2, 3, and 4, so that our grants department can just go and look. They can filter by objective and see, are all of them in the completed pile? Oh, they're not? They're still in the backlog? Well, how did we forget one? And so if you start to think about what stakeholders need to be kept informed about the progress as it's going along, and then what that looks like, you can do that a bunch of different ways. And so we put a couple of digital project managers up here, but you don't even have to use these. You can use Excel, you can use Word, you can use anything. But I encourage you to think about sharing documents and sharing these project plans, because your grants team and your technical team and your stakeholders, all of those could be on the same page. Oh, this one's mine too. Okay. Pace yourself. So this goes back to talking to your technical partners, or at least internally, about when things need to get done. I have seen many a project where it's a 2-year funded TIG project, and they'd like the technical piece completed in the first 3 months, and then they've got the next 1.5 years and change to like do other stuff. Don't do that. So if you have the time, think about what is the best time to do things. It may take you a while, it may take you longer than you wanted it to write the RFP. You may want to spend more time. If I could put one thing in your brain to take away from today, give yourself time for discovery, because the project you came in with, the project you thought that you had that was perfect, once you start talking to a technical partner, once they start looking under the hood of the projects you want to, or the other software they want to hook into, they may say, hey, you thought you were going to solve it like this, but I think we could actually solve that problem way faster or quicker or more efficiently doing it this way. And if you build in 1 to 3 months of project discovery time, you're going to give yourself the opportunity to iterate on that. And I know LSC accepts you can go back to LSC and say, hey, we changed our mind about this project because we now know more about it because we've looked into it more with our technical team, and we're prepared to move forward with this slightly different variation of solving the same problem. And so pace yourself and give yourself that opportunity for discovery. Did I miss anything?
No, I think so. I think that's it. Okay, so one of the practices that I've used that really has been useful is to have a steering committee for a project. And it depends like how big it is, but that gets everybody together. There's always one person who makes the final decision, but it gets folks involved throughout the project. I'm the IT person. There are lots of decisions that I shouldn't be making. Like, you as our grantees don't want me making decisions about how we grant money to you. We have people who have been working in the space and know that much better than I do. So having a steering committee, they tell me, they make the big decisions, and if we can't, come to consensus, then we have one person who has final say. That keeps projects moving. Sometimes we disagree with each other, but that's okay. That helps us keep everybody informed along the way. And I will talk about communication a little bit more, because I don't think there's a way that you can over-communicate development and projects and all of these things.
Absolutely. Keeping the project moving forward is very important. And so that's why if you've got a single person who's responsible as the point of contact, it's their job to champion that project. They should be able to make an executive decision and say, okay, even though we're not 100% in agreement on this direction, this is the way we're going to go. Because you don't want projects stalling in limbo because you've gotten to gridlock. When you've got 2 people on one side and 2 people on the other side, who's the one who gets to make the final call?
And you often have a vendor saying, tick-tock, if you don't make this decision, we're going to be behind schedule.
Which we're going to talk about in the next slide. Okay, again, this is an analogy I use all the time. So this is my rather janky version of it on this slide. Let's say you're a legal aid and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got this idea. We're going to build a justice van, and we're going to put people in the van, and we're going to drive to where the justice needs to happen. And it's going to be the greatest justice van that ever happened. And you're like, great. Which, by the way, I actually like justice vans. I'm not knocking on them. But 6 months down the road, you tell your technical vendor, we changed our mind. We don't know about a justice van. We're thinking justice mopeds. Justice mopeds are the thing. Everyone gets a moped. Well, your vendor's already put certain things in place that have made the justice van work. It's already started the walls, it's put the engine. Well, now they have to restructure it so it's a moped engine and 2 wheels, and they bought these other wheels. They got to sell them on OfferUp. And then 6 months down the road, the person's like, you know what? Mopeds are too big of an issue. People don't know how to drive mopeds, but everyone knows how to ride a bicycle. Justice bicycles for all. What you may not understand is not only are you asking the technical partner and your team to change vision over and over again, you are wasting money, you're wasting time, and almost more importantly to me, you're ruining morale. Because people came in with this, they were so excited to solve this problem, and they wanted to see it done a certain way. And because you didn't spend the time of discovery to figure out that Justice Bicycles, that was the one, you started with the first version. Now everyone's a little confused. Maybe they really loved the first idea, and now we've moved on to a different idea that seems scaled down. You also ruin forward momentum, and I feel like you see a lot of people disengage and get really demoralized. We fall in, it's almost like in the first slide, we had that trough of disillusionment.
They're in the trough at this point.
Yeah, so we've got several people who've fallen off the wagon in the trough of disillusionment at this point. So indecision hurts projects and it hurts people.
And I think just going back to scope also, if you, in the beginning, think about the scope that you can actually achieve and set yourself, that will set you up for success rather than this indecision and hurting morale by making the changes. That's all you.
It's all me. Okay, so interns are great, volunteers are great, love both of those. This is not saying interns are not useful on projects. Interns are just not leads on projects. They should not be in, if a role is required to hold up this deck of cards, it probably should not be an intern's role. And so I've seen very successful projects where people said, hey, once a year we are going to have an intern go and just check this one page of text to make sure that it is still compliant with the law and update some stuff. Because we almost always have interns over the summer. We know we can do that recurringly, indefinitely. Cool, no problem. However, if you are building something giant and you're like, we're just gonna have this group of interns who are here for a very limited amount of time, who may have very chaotic schedules, 2 hours on Tuesday, 3 hours on Wednesday, and then they're gone to write all of this content. Oh, and then they're going to synthesize it across all of the interns that you have. You may be setting yourself up for some challenges. Not only are they going to write in a different tone of voice, which goes to your branding. If we've got any communications people in here, I hope for some nods. Yeah. You're also going to have people who may be in this because they had to do it for school and they don't really care about it, and so they're not giving you their best work. You may have some super dedicated people that get stuck in the weeds, and so they never leave the one paragraph thing you ask them to write for an entire summer because they're so excited to get that one thing perfect. And so generally speaking, I'm just saying, be very mindful of the way that you staff and resource interns on projects.
All right, that was Ellie's sort of hobby horse. Here's mine, maintenance again. So think about your project. Who's gonna update the app, the website, the system? Do you have that person, or are you hiring someone? Who has admin privileges? I mean, it's kind of basic, but sometimes we don't think about it. What do we have in place when that one person that's been working on this project decides to leave and go to another organization? And this is my favorite, especially with all the integrations between our systems. Who do we call when something breaks? And when you have, 2 systems integrated, and one vendor is telling you it's the other vendor's fault, and then that vendor's telling you, no, they don't know what they're doing. I've been working on this project all week while I've been here. And so what are the operations, what are operations? And do you have that written down? Do you know what maintenance looks like?
One that I want to highlight is the staff turnover. A lot of times, legal aid employees get the /you award all over the place. They are the paralegal / technical coordinator for this / something else. And so whatever that person sees as their primary role tends to be the thing that they train their replacement on when they leave, or leave notes for when they leave. If their /you award is for the chatbot you built with a TIG project, or the pro bono software that they run, or they probably didn't put it in their notes, and that person who comes in next may not even realize that it's supposed to be their responsibility until ever, or at least, several months down the road. And so that goes down to your operations and your processes and knowing who's doing what, and then how do you convey that moving forward? Whose job is it to make sure that that ball doesn't get dropped?
So I went to a session earlier in the conference that was about making change fun, which was great, if those folks are here. And they were also talking about the importance of communication. So you start a new development or project, you need to communicate with everyone. There's no such thing as over-communicating, giving everybody updates, telling them how the progress is going, or maybe if you have a couple bumps in the road, making it fun. We at LSC, we've done some projects where I would send out weekly updates. We would have parties. We would have food. I like to feed people whenever we were in person, and that helped them listen to what we were saying about the project and the system. I think food helps you get everybody together. And the other thing that I wanted to say about communication is it's really hard for non-technical people, usually, to visualize what a system is going to look like or how it's going to work. So you have to think about how your intake person is going to use this and what it means for them and how to tell them that it's going to look. And so your communication is explaining to all these different people what's in it for them and how this system is going to work in the end. And one of the ways to do this very intentionally from the beginning is to actually write down a communications plan. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It's just, these are the people that I have to communicate with, and this is the frequency by which I'm going to communicate with them, and these are my major themes that I'm going to tell them about. And doing a little bit of that planning ahead of time really can help you throughout your implementation of a system.
I can't co-sign on communication enough. I think it is as valuable to think, how often do we need to communicate and who needs to be there as who doesn't need to be there, and how often do we not need to communicate? If you're a dork like me and you've been seeing that all over BuzzFeed and all the other things, that Shopify just unilaterally canceled everybody's meetings unless they were with 2 people, I think that was very cool, because I think it makes people be really mindful. Does everyone need to be in this meeting? You want to make sure that you have all the stakeholders in the meeting, and that if people don't need to be there, they don't have action items, then maybe they don't need to be there. But knowing ahead of time that you want, hey, we need to have bi-weekly meetings, we need to have quarterly meetings, and this is the frequency with which makes a lot of sense for this project.
With these stakeholders, I need to have meetings. With those stakeholders, I can send them a weekly email or whatever other. I can put flyers up in the hallway, whatever works in your organization.
I'm so glad you said that, because I wasn't even thinking about that. Communication plans don't have to be meetings. Your communication plan can be in emails. You can say, hey, I want a weekly or bi-weekly status email. If you're managing or the manager of the managers of this project and you're not actively involved, you may just need, hey, I just need a once a month, how's this project going? Is it behind? Is it on time? Is it just bullet points? And so those can be in your communication plan. It's not all about face-to-face or Zoom meetings. Yeah.
The problems that we create as we are developing systems or implementing systems are things we will live with for the entire life of the system.
Will you say it again, please, for the people in the back?
Yes. So everybody can look back at mistakes they've made in the past and think, oh my God, I had to deal with that the entire life of the system. And I have not been totally successful in this, but I would say make your system as simple as possible. Sometimes some of us nerds get enamored with technology and make things, we overbuild, we make things too complicated. We don't always think about someone needing to maintain it. We build integrations between systems. Make sure you need those integrations. Make sure that that is actually necessary. Those APIs, they complicate things. And don't start with end-of-life software if you're doing a project, because you're gonna get through like, oh, I've implemented, and then you're immediately gonna have to refresh and do work on upgrading that software.
Absolutely.
All right.
Before we move into, so we're going to do a bit of a game. We're going to play Family Feud, but it's a little different. I'm going to read you a fact pattern, and then we're going to ask people to think about it, and then raise your hand if you heard something in there that may help trigger abandonware. No one of the things that we've talked about today can kill a project, but death by 1,000 cuts, if it's a little bit of all of them, I'm heading straight to abandonware. And for those of you, I actually had several people ask me, what is abandonware? Abandonware is any project that gets abandoned. And what I see most frequently in our industry is where people get a grant to build something. They're like, it's the most awesome thing, but we also didn't plan for how it continues after that. And so that is what I tend to see abandonware happen in our industry, and I never want to see that happen. And so I teach you all today so that we try to avoid that.
Can I add something there?
Yeah.
So I actually think it's okay if you're trying something new and it doesn't work, to say, this doesn't work, I'm going to stop this experiment, and this is what we've learned from it. I'm not sure I would consider that abandonware.
Nope.
That was us learning. And I think one of the things that I see us as a community not doing very well is saying to each other that it's okay. We've tried something new and it didn't work. I wouldn't want to do that, with millions of dollars, knowing our resource levels, but, just, it's okay to say, we failed at that one. Let's learn and move on.
I'm so glad you said that, and we should have actually had a slide about that. She's 1,000,000% correct. Failing and learning something is not the same as abandonware. But in order to try to avoid that becoming a multi-million-dollar thing, if you do the project discovery at the beginning and you do the scoping of a project, you can say, okay, rather than building this multi-$100,000 project, what is the smallest version of that we can pilot? It's a really avant-garde, really innovative way to try this. Rather than rolling it out to every one of our many counties, how could we build it just for one county and see if that would work? And then if we like it, we can say, hey, we know this works now, let's scale it. Or how can we build a smaller version of the project? Rather than having 7 APIs that connect to every different system we eventually wanted to connect with, what if it only connected to one system on the first go? And let's learn something. And yes, we learned that it was a terrible idea, let's A, learn it was a terrible idea, B, bring that to TIG and tell everybody at ITC, don't do this because we already tried it and it didn't work out. And let's learn from failures. And that is not the same at all as abandonware. Before we move on to the game, I did want to say, just quick, did anybody have any questions? Oh, we do. That's a great question. Okay, so the question was, as a non-technical person, how do we communicate to non-technical people when we're doing user tests? And if they can't see and visualize the finished product. Is that correct? Am I understanding it correctly? I have an answer for this.
Go ahead, I'll add in.
I think user testing is so important, and I think that there are several different types of user tests, and sometimes they get lumped in together. So there's technical user testing, which is does the thing do the thing it's supposed to do? Then there's iterative user testing that's could the person find the button that helps them do the thing that they wanted to do? And between that is depending on where you are in the project. So at the very beginning, when you have wireframes and you have when things aren't fully developed, you can do some of that technical, okay, we want to click this button to go here and we want to do this. You have a lot of really great systems, Figma being one of them. Are you familiar? Yeah. So Figma, for those of you who don't know, is a wireframing, but a system that you can have quasi-photorealistic views on. But it's just kind of like it's not PowerPoint, but like you could think about it like you can click the button and it would go to another page. And so you can have your designers and your developers, whether you want to do this in-house just as a quick mock-up or work with technical vendors that have UX people who can do this, have them take higher resolution, even if they're not completed, high resolution products, and test with the Figma before you then go and actually put code into the computers and build all of the systems out. Because if they're like, I'm on this page, but I have no idea what any of this means, you need to figure out, do they not know what it means because of the content? Do they not know what it means because we've taken them to a page that has no buttons and no clear path forward? And it's so much easier to iterate when you can just copy and paste a whole page on Figma and say, like, move the button here and change this title, than it is to go and say, we're going from Justice Bus to Justice Bicycle. So that is how I would do is I would have people with higher resolution wireframes earlier on. Does that help?
And I would just add to that. I mean, even when you're in the idea stage and you want to talk to some of the stakeholders who are going to use the system, I think it's really hard for them to understand what the heck you're talking about sometimes, because sometimes we just don't communicate well about what we want the system to do. And even then using, create a wireframe and say, hey, this is, when I say this is what I mean. I'm thinking the system is going to look like this. And we had some really basic, in some of our projects have had some really basic wireframes just to give people ideas of what the heck we're talking about.
That was a great question. Any other questions?
You're going to get this later. Like, that's fine. I wonder if you have any tips for sane, for sane documentation approaches, in that institutional decisions were made or not made for a reason, a configuration was made or not made for a reason. Is it that if it works well, you don't need documentation and you should not aim for that? Or is it, even something as simple as like, oh, we use ShareFile, we use email, and it's chaos. Like, I'm looking for sanity.
We have all failed at this, by the way. What we have started doing at LSC is, for one of our systems that we have a lot of change in, we have a Smartsheet. So, Smartsheet is this magical little SaaS product that's like Excel on drugs. And it's like Excel, but it's a little special. And so what we try to do is we'll have a meeting and someone will say, I want to make this change. I want to do these 5 things. So we enter a line in the Smartsheet and then say, okay, who's approved this? Because the other thing is, when you're making changes to systems, what you're doing is you're spending money. So who has approved this? And then, the outcome of that, did we make the change or not? Because I find myself, I don't know if it's age or what, but I can't remember what decisions we made last week. And I certainly can't remember, one of my colleagues and I will go, didn't we already talk about that? Didn't we make that decision 6 months ago? I will tell you this isn't easy though, because you have to be really disciplined in like, oh, somebody just said something I need to capture and I need to follow up on.
Okay, I have another lo-fi way. And admittedly, lots of failures along this. However, in recent years, I have a policy where I set agendas, and I do this with management meetings, when I have stand-ups with employees, or if I'm working on a project. I have whether you like Word or Google Docs, either one, I make a page that says what's been completed, what is in progress, what is blocked, action items, and discussion points, and then action items. And then here's the innovative thing. I just keep putting that same template above it, and I have the longest scrolling document, and I put decision in all caps if the decision is made. So for every given project, I may have a 50-page Google Doc or that just has this running list of all of the meetings where decisions were made, Because I think if you start saving it as different documents, then you're like, well, what was my naming template? Was this on the 7th or was this on the 9th? And
We have that problem because we take notes at our meetings.
Yeah.
And then somebody says, and we put them all in our content management, inbox. And somebody says, didn't we make that decision? And then I'm going through all of these minutes like every week, and it's maddening.
all in one document. It revolutionized the way that I take notes for agendas. Y'all are fancier than me. You may not be able to do that.
Super quick follow up on that. We use Planner and Teams for that. And Planner has, the buckets, so you can move the project along. Then, you close it when it's done. But that search bar in Planner lets you search everything after. So if you use Trello or Planner or whatever, for our legal server admin meetings, that's how we know what we did, when we decided, all of that. And you get to assign who's working on it. So it's really nice to use for that.
You're absolutely right, Terry. If you're using a project management system, you can also just take notes when things are made or decisions on those actual Kanban tickets. And that can be really useful because then you can see the comments that are made kind of throughout the process. And that's a good point. Any other questions at this point? We've gotten good questions so far. Cool. Okay. All right,
how do I do this?
We'll just take us to the next slide.
one? Okay.
All right. Open your ears because I'm going to read aloud because we did make a card for it. The Grants Department of Legal Aid wants to build a knowledge management tool to help them track all of the organization's grants. They gathered 12 stakeholders from around their organization to draft a 2-year grant proposal and work as project sponsors. The stakeholders team decides together that the project should cost about $15,000 to build and will take about 3 months. The team is confident that their new idea and their ability to execute the project, because they intend on hosting an alternative spring break and law students will help build out the LMS content. The team agrees to meet about every 6 months during the 2-year term to ensure the project is on schedule. Once the project is over, they hope to seek follow-on funding for maintenance. Is there anything in there that any of you heard? I'll take hands raised, and you can just shout out hands raised for tips on what didn't work. Yeah, just one thing.
Unrealistic budget.
Okay, you're on the board. That is also true. It's not one I wrote down, but I should have.
Define knowledge management.
Okay, again, also true. That goes together. Better end goals, better communication.
That sounds content heavy.
It is content heavy. A 1,000,000%, you're on the board. Also, none of you are wrong. I just didn't put them on the board. But yes, interns, you're on the board because they're running the project. A 1,000,000%, you're on the board. This needs better pacing. Anyone
We've all
else?
done this, by the way.
Absolutely. This is no shame. Everybody's been on these projects. Amazing. Yes, you're on the board. The no maintenance funding. No clear decision maker. We're designing by committee on this one. Excellent, excellent. Let me see if I had any more.
I think you got them all.
I think you got them all, but I had somebody else saw a raised hand. If there was one and you wanted to shout out another thing that's wrong with that fact pattern, please feel free to. Okay, so that was our Family Feud game. Y'all are so amazing. It went super fast. But I do want to say thank you all for playing. And we are all guilty of doing some or all of these things at some point. Our only hope in this presentation is that we, work a little bit smarter, a little bit harder every time going forward to make better projects. And so now we send you all home to your respective organizations to keep your ears wide open. And if you hear any of these buzzwords, you're now totally prepared to say, wait a second, who's building that content? Or How long? Where did that budget come from?
Who did you ask about that budget?
Who did you ask about this? Who's in charge of making sure this project finishes on time? Or is the entire committee in charge? So,
In summary, have we checked our assumptions about the time and the cost to build? Who's the single decision maker? Do we understand the problem we're trying to solve? What will the system need to be maintained? Have we put together our long-term project plan? Who's in charge of that? Okay.
and then our final slide is just our LinkedIn links. Please feel free to use the QR codes and connect with us. I'm not one to ask questions during presentations, so please, I'll stick around for a bit. I'm sure Jada will stick around for a bit if you all have more questions you want to chat about, or troubleshoot issues that you're seeing in your own organization. We're happy to talk about those too.
And I actually think, we're not experts on this. We are, I think we as a community just need to help each other. Like, just reach out and ask questions. What'd you do when this happened to you? And the obligatory slide, please use Whova.
Thanks, everyone.